Hey, how do you do out there, everyone? My name is Michael, and welcome to another installment of me sketching things for practice and fun here in the Duke Corner. As promised last week, I'm here with my finished piece for the Mali I started drawing in last week's sketch episode. I have plenty to talk about with this later as it progresses, so let's get right into it then, shall we? Though the first part is all just me finalizing the sketch and inking, so I'll be quiet for now. So here's about where I got into the color, and I started making some interesting decisions. I made the background blue so I could see what I was doing, because he's all dressed in gray and white, as was established in the last sketch episode, which makes him look all silvery and shiny. This is also where I made my first of two real mistakes. And I made a few others along the line, but those are mostly just forgetting elements I wanted to stick in, or colors that I didn't exactly enjoy all the most and could have changed to make them fit a little bit more palatably. The first of these mistakes was that I should have probably separated the layers better. And by probably I mean I should have. But I ended up with the color all messed up on just one layer, so I wasn't able to shade or highlight things as easily later on different layers of his person. For instance, the cloak being its own item, then the metal pieces, all the other fabric pieces, the foreground chunks of his body and the background chunks of his body, things that I wanted in dark and light. I should have probably separated all of those so that I could shade them all different ways, but I sort of messed that one up. And that didn't end up being all too much of a problem, since I made him really glowy in the end, so he kind of had light sources from every direction. But I thought it was something to mention. Always check your layers, everyone. I went with black and gold for his items because I thought they stood out a lot more on him that way. And I wanted to actually add in some color again, so I went with a sort of reddish color on the inner side of his cape. It was really harsh at first, but I dulled it out. You'll see I pulled up a picture of a hot iron bar. I pulled that up for reference to the gradient of colors that iron makes when it's really hot. A lot of Mali's magic and skill is themed in forging. He has black eyes and hair, sort of like a dark coal, and everything sort of cracks apart and glows like hot red coals when he uses his magic. And the way that I play him is that the more magic he expends and the more aggressive he gets with his casting, the more whitish that red becomes until he would be a sort of hot white like hot iron. In this image, I clearly went with the hot white because I wanted to show him doing the full power Silver Mage thing. I probably talked right through it with the color, but I did one of my favorite tricks you'll see probably a lot from me. I just duplicated the lines and cut out all the middle stuff, then thickened the outside to make it really bold. I think that brings attention to his figure and separates it from the rest of the detail lines. I suppose the same effect could have been achieved if I was better at line weighting, but I'm not particularly good at that, so this is sort of a compensation for me right now. After changing up some of the color in the line art to soften it out, I began work on an idea that I will sadly eventually scrap. I wanted for him to literally be breaking apart the ground with the amount of expended power, and shed in spellfire, which is a sort of weird substance that he has access to through a magic item in the game. Both together would have been a nice show of power, sort of like a nuke going off at his feet. But that's where my next mistake comes in. You see, I know something that I never put into practice, and probably really should, but I'm not very good at it, as with a lot of other things right now. It's that you have to work on the whole piece equally, or one thing will always end up with more love than others, and it'll look out of place. In this case, I hadn't actually made the background part of what I was doing until just about now, once I had already had the colors and the full idea in for Mali. I just had too much focus on the character. So though those rocks were pretty cool, and the fire was a pretty great idea, when I tried flashing through some different background ideas, none of them really looked all that right, because none of them were developed with the character in mind. It's something I clearly have to work on, and I have some ideas in the next few episodes for how to improve on that. So we'll see how that all works out when I get to those. Regardless of that fumble, I picked it back up, improving those glyphs with some extra awesome Celtic knot shapes, and making everything all really hot and glowy. And with a suggestion from my brother, who was quick to tell me that he would look nice floating in a foggy astral sea full of stars, I was back on track with something pretty great looking. And with stars splotted in, here we have it. Mali the Silver Mage in his full glory. minus a few elements and such that I thought up while I was drawing, but it still looks pretty fine, just there floating in the astral plane, casting spells that'll probably blow up the astral plane. Really, because I do have a plan to do that kinda. I mean, he's not called the Mad Mage for nothing. So if I come back with another story and a picture about the astral plane being exploded and the universe falling apart, well, that's what happened. It was Mally's fault. Aside from that, I think despite a few mistakes and mishaps, this came out really good, and I quite love it, and I hope you all do too. If you did like this picture, or want to hear more about Mally or any other stories or such, let me know in the comments. And if you did enjoy this video, as I certainly hope you did, don't forget to do all that like and subscribble stuff. Who knows, maybe sharing too? It'll help me get this content out there to more people who like it too. And until next time, farewell.